everyone. My name's Ellen and I am the Technical Manager for the National Rural Touring Forum. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to your keynote speaker this morning, Amanda Parker.
Good morning and welcome to this talk, which I've called, in a moment of random inspiration, Eat, Zoom, Embrace. I hope it will become clear in the next 15 minutes why I've called it that. And before I dive in, I'd like to thank NRTF for inviting me to kick off what feels like, to me, a vital series of conversations that are not just hot right now, but also vital if we want to stay meaningful, survive the onslaughts of current living, and also shape a future where as many of us as possible can thrive. I want to start by thanking the Zoom gods. The miracles of technology mean that we can collaborate and communicate in a way that we've never done before. And I don't just mean the whole dissolving of geographical boundary, but also the erosion of certain behaviours and norms. It could just be me, but let's see. InCarts UK is very much a product of the Zoom call. I set up InCarts late last year because I wanted to shape a conversation about protected characteristics and all art forms, to ask everyone who works in the sector, what do we need to do our best work, and how do we ensure we create inclusive spaces for everyone? So no small ambition, obviously. My timing couldn't have been better. Or do I mean worse? Fantastic that we were soon to be able to talk to so many different people across the art form, across regions, nations, courtesy of lockdown. But a bit less fantastic because our first piece of research launched in the week of lockdown, and it's about career development in the sector. For most of us, summer was not a time to think about career progression. We will publish the research later this month, and I'm pleased that despite its difficult birth, it provides a snapshot of the past and possibly the seeds of a blueprint for what not to do when we return. I must apologise though for that phrase, when we return, because I know it's not as simple as that. It means if we return, if we survive, if we choose to, if we have a choice, and all of the above. As I was saying, InCarts is a product of the digital now, but we're definitely about the physical space, how we create welcome to others, how we're welcomed ourselves, how we're supported through the people, processes, and places we inhabit, to create an environment that shares love and is lovely. And I do love our Zoom spaces, especially our meetings, which the InCarts meetings always start with someone playing music. We often have a resident DJ, and then you get a room full of sometimes hundreds of people just coming into the Zoom room like this and calling out to their friends, old and new. And at the end of the Zoom call, I feel like the pub landlord, as I literally have to kick people out of the meeting because I think I've made the space a bit too welcoming. So there is that hope for the sector, too welcoming. A diverse work team across age, ability, neurology, ethnicity, everything makes for a space that welcomes all, because when it's truly inclusive, it reflects the all of our society, and we can all relate to some or other relevance or resonance that comes from inclusive work in practice and filters through to the work we create and the audience that the work attracts. Recently, I read with horror online a question asking, is it rude to eat during a Zoom call? On the same day, my son came back from being out. It was lockdown. He wasn't at school. He was in virtual school. And one of his teachers had asked a child to stop eating during class, to which the child kind of went, oh, I'm at home, which to me goes to the heart of what we're going to talk about, not just today, but for the rest of the conference. I love Zoom because I can invite you to join a meeting in a way that you can be your most relaxed self. Kick off your shoes, eat that late breakfast, or the early lunch, whatever you want. I invite you to do that right now, for this moment, for the rest of the conference, for the rest of your Zoom life. On every digital space you find yourself, I invite you to welcome the child that interrupts the facade of professionalism, the dog that steals the scene, the Amazon delivery that interrupts the flow. Tolerate every poor connection, every conversation that starts with "you're on mute." Technology is teaching us tolerance if we embrace it and we allow it to. Let's not replicate the non-inclusive behaviours that happen online. Let's break through the microaggressions with the use of the chat facility and with an open heart that allows us to be in our own space, in our own way, but also in the fellowship of others. And it's this spirit that has to go into the offer we make to our audiences. Sometimes the work that goes into making the conversation or the production inclusive, as it really should be, feels hard and weighty and takes time because it is hard and weighty and because it does. Inclusion can't work at speed. It's counterintuitive, but it pays endless, wonderful dividends. I also love Zoom because you can scan the room for close-up reaction to jokes. I can't right now because I'm giving a speech, but when I look back, I'm going to see the moment when this joke lands, if it does. So here's one for starters. At the beginning of lockdown, when it all felt like it was a bit of a laugh, there was a joke going around the Twitter sphere. But before I get to the joke, let me qualify. A joke that went round what my friends call Black Twitter. Now, Black Twitter is not like the dark web. It's a space that's accessible to everyone, like much of Twitter. And you can enter the Black Twitter sphere by just joining the millions of Black, Asian, and ethnically diverse people and organizations sharing their stuff with others of common interest, irrespective of skin tone. So I'd urge you to dive in. But back to the joke. It was this. Are you worried about the police following your every movement? Are you wondering where your next paycheck's coming from? Relax, you've only been Black for a week. And that joke, you've only been Black for a week, usually elicits a wry smile from those of us familiar with life at the margins, and a frisson of discomfort from those of us who are new to the idea of being harassed by the police, or worrying about job security, or even worrying about the education and futures of the young. I'm not going to tell you that COVID is a great leveler. A great many of us have experienced being pushed to the limits of our patience, of our resourcefulness, and of hope. And many of us are still there at the margins of hope. And at the margins of hope is fear. Fear of what might or might not happen. But this is what's happening at the moment. Disabled people are shielding. Some arts venues are opening. In the absence of any useful agreement on insurance, some producers are taking risks of mounting smaller productions in the hope of keeping their businesses viable and their creativity connecting with others. Some of us who are nervous are still self-isolating, whether that's because of underlying health conditions, a lack of comfort with the existing rules that are constantly changing, or through the nervousness that comes simply from being in a demographic group that seems at higher risk of fatality from COVID. I have to say, I'm not sure what to feel when I hear of a celebration of the sector returning, which I hear in lots of meetings. And I can really empathise with the excitement for those creatives returning to the thing they love. But I can't bring myself to enter an art gallery yet, or a theatre. And I miss live performance as much as anyone. I miss being in a nightclub more than I could ever imagine. But I just can't reconcile my feelings with the other feelings I have, which is I feel like as a Black woman, if I go to the theatre right now, it might just kill me. So there's a fear in what might or might not happen. And the same goes for employment. There's a huge disparity of opinion about what the future sector looks like, from optimism and the embracing of different models for sharing work and staging work, through to the despair of losing talent and knowledge from the sector for good. We're all somewhere on that spectrum. And this has everything to do with inclusion and diversity, because before we get down into what we mean by inclusion, diversity, before we consider whether it's useful to look at bias or racism, prejudice or preference, our first step in a lifelong journey to creating inclusive change is to accept. Which brings me back to my title, Eat, Zoom, Embrace. Accept our differences, tolerate each other's perspectives, embrace the unfamiliar, unlikely, unconventional, dive into Black Twitter. The things that challenge our sense of self. We're all intersectional, overlapping beings, and I invite you to lean heavily into finding common ground, whilst at the same time respecting and engaging with curious and open hearts with the stuff that's as far away from our experience as we've ever known. I'm going to take a drink. It's not just a prop, but I do like to live a casual Zoom life. And yet this joke, you've only been Black for a week, has another resonance, I think. What sits behind the joke, as if you need telling, is it makes clear the sudden shift in perspective that's happened for so many people. A shift in perspective that's the common daily experience of others. And that's where there's resonance in the joke, I feel, for those working in rural arts practice. The pandemic, murder of George Floyd, and sharpened focus on Black Lives Matters has created a perfect storm of heightened public awareness around inclusion and diversity. Fantastic. It's weird, the sudden ability to see what's been in plain sight for years, but positive change can come from it, and it might be exactly the same for rural arts touring provision. The perfect storm of pandemic, large-scale interruption of physical engagement with the arts and culture, and the heightened awareness of the vast disparity of opportunity and wealth that exists across the UK might also result in positive change for good. The conversation about the arts sector's survival is routinely, in the media at least, about the arts in London and the Southeast, about towns and cities, about the national treasures of the big buildings. For those working in rural touring, I need not tell this audience, and delivering to coastal communities, working in areas that never, ever make the headlines, you might feel like rewriting that joke to reflect what's going on in the sector. What's been in plain sight for years is that vast swathes of the UK has felt neglected by public sector funding routes and overlooked in public sector arts and cultural conversations. So when the UK's arts and cultural sector rises up en masse, as it has done in lockdown, to say, what about us? We are vital to communities. We create jobs, connect communities, promote tourism, bring beauty, colour, inspiration. Do not ignore the arts. You'd be forgiven if you work in rural arts provision for wanting to say to the London cohort and city cohort, relax, you've only been rural for a week. The only thing missing from a Zoom call, of course, is the spontaneous, unexpected applause. Feel free to add a clap hands or thumbs up emoji. So, in the face of such beleaguerment, who's got time for inclusion? The answer has to be everybody, or nobody survives. For inclusion is more than just about protected characteristic. From neurodiversity and social class to religion and ethnicity, if we are to be a society that grows equality and opportunity for all, everyone has to commit that no area is left behind, that we share the tools of growth, education, training, personal development, fulfillment, and inspiration that comes from meaningful cultural engagement. Black, Asian, and ethnically diverse teams, when they produce artistic programs with non-diverse organisations, deliver significantly higher levels of diverse engagement. Barbershop Chronicles, written by a Black playwright, directed by an Iranian director, saw an all-Black cast deliver an unprecedented 35% increase in diverse audience attendance to the National Theatre, which in itself is not in a non-diverse area. A production of Frankenstein, through the promotion and directing of the young creative team, saw the biggest spike in sales to under 25-year-olds in over 10 years of Manchester Royal Exchange's productions. Studies by consultants McKinsey, I'll stop soon with the statistics. Studies by consultants McKinsey report that an 87% increase in productivity is possible if you diversify the workforce, which just makes me wonder, what is everyone doing at work if you can just increase productivity to such a large degree by just mixing up the staffing? There can be no doubt that inclusive practices and behaviours, from the welcome at the box office to the staff behind the production, brings with it enormous benefits, engaging sections of the community beyond the narrowest definitions to expand to a Zoom-like world of endless possibility. Just don't forget to welcome everyone in their true, authentic state. Food, dogs, children, everything. Just remember, when we do return, whatever that looks like, what looks like a lack of polish or just plain chaos is actually best for business and best for all of our mental health. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amanda. We're just going to take a few moments to set up the next call for the panel chat. So please do head back to the home screen or follow the live icon on your timetable in Attendify to join us. We'll be introducing Terry Adams, including Amanda Parker, and a few more great names into our next panel chat in a few moments. If you are watching us on YouTube, please do try to join in on Attendify, or you are missing out on the interactivity and the chat function. We'll see you in just a few moments. Thank you.